I'm just so glad that we're having this conversation and we're about to have a great one. So I am really excited to introduce you to two wonderful people. Dr. Marina Catalazzi is Barnard's Vice President of Health and Wellness and Chief Health Officer, and Jana Meyerowitz Turner. Dr. Catalazzi has a long and exciting bio, but I'm gonna share a bunch of it because I love it. Board certified in pediatrics and adolescent medicine and an expert in qualitative methods and education science. She has an active adolescent medicine practice in Washington Heights and is an associate professor of pediatrics at Columbia's Vagelos College of Physicians and Surgeons. She's also an associate professor of population and family health at the Mailman School. Where she's been the director of the General Public Health Program, co-lead of the Sexual and Reproductive Health Certificate, and the faculty in Mailman's core curriculum. Jana is a strategist and a career entrepreneur. She started her first company, Style House Public Relations, at 23, and today she runs Sinistry Capital, a cross-sector impact vehicle through which she has three main areas of focus: investing in and building startups, conducting personal brand alignment with executives and entrepreneurs, high impact leaders, and other people who do lots of things. Can confirm she's good at it. And incubating conscious capitalism projects designed to change the way money and power flow in the world. Jenna's also the co-founder of the VCs for Repro Coalition, which we're going to talk about a bit, and which was honored as a Fast Company world-changing idea for 2023. She also sits on the board of A Call to Men, a national violence prevention organization training and educating men and boys on healthy manhood. So as I was prepping for this, I was like, what do I say to this room, which already knows everything about this and is like deeply in the fight? So I'm just going to give us like a little bit of context just to get into the conversation, but it's really nice to have this in this room because I think it's going to be very rich. So it's been less than a year. We're coming up on just a year since Dobbs v. Jackson was handed down, which, as you all know, overturned Roe. And it's been a lot. It's been a very, very crazy and hectic year. States are now setting their own policies, protecting or banning abortion without any federal standard, protecting access to abortion, which means that depending on where you live, your state has abortion laws and regulations that restrict or support whether, when, and under what circumstances providers can offer abortion care and an abortion seeker can obtain an abortion, and they might not be in the same as a neighboring state. So if you live in Oregon, for example, one of the more protective states, abortion's not restricted based on gestational age. State Medicaid funds cover abortion. State fund helps patients pay for abortion care. There are protections for harassment and physical harm for anyone entering an abortion clinic. Private health insurance plans are required to cover abortion. It is not only physicians, qualified healthcare professionals can provide abortions, but if you live in Texas, abortion is completely banned with very limited exceptions. Patients are forced to make 2 trips, one for counseling and then another 24 hours later. State Medicaid coverage is banned, except for in very limited circumstances. Private health insurance of abortion is banned, except in very limited circumstances. Medication abortion has to be provided in person. You need parental consent or notice for a minor's abortion. Only physicians can provide abortions. And there are all kinds of other unnecessary regulations. So that's just 2 examples. State by state, very hard to keep up with everything that's going on. But the information I'm giving you is from the Guttmacher Institute and reflects the policies that are in effect right now, right? So it doesn't include proposed bills, pending legislation, laws that are on hold because of legal challenges, and there is hope there. So I don't want you to feel like it's all dark. In Ohio, for example, there's some really exciting work happening. There's a coalition of statewide reproductive health, rights, and justice organizations that are working to get a measure on the ballot to secure explicit abortion access in the Ohio Constitution, and they've got momentum. So it's probably a slogan at this point, but it feels like, vote like your life depends on it, because it does. As for medication abortion, which we'll talk about a bit, the majority of Americans say it should be legal in their state. As of right now, both of the pills are available, but there is uncertainty both for providers and abortion seekers. Now, I found all of this information online, but that is actually kind of a dangerous thing to do. Because for lots of reasons, which but also investigative journalists at ProPublica, which used a tool created by the markup, found that websites selling abortion pills share data with Google. Google receives tens of thousands of requests for data from law enforcement on a wide range of topics every year. So I did the search online on purpose to see what I could find and to do what I think most people do, right? We all have access to a really rich network, but that is not the case for everyone. So for you to find the information you need, I would encourage you to talk to your local abortion fund. It's kind of like your NPR station in every place. They will tell you what's happening in your community, direct you to what you need to find. So this is kind of an unusual conversation, and it's unusual because though I am a lawyer, I stopped practicing like 10 years ago. And usually these are lawyer conversations. Usually these are like, what's legal, what's happening, what's the state of play in this state and whatever. And this is not that. So this is all for me to say that if you have questions about what the law says, I do not know. I don't have the answer. I don't think you should Google it. I think you should talk to your local abortion fund. This is a really different conversation because we're going to talk about two really important things. One, what is the role of business in all of this? Like, what's happening in businesses? What are people doing? Where is there possibility and progress? And also, what's happening at Barnard? So what is just what's possible for students right now, like just practically, but also what is the role of Barnard as a historically women's college, a feminist institution in this moment? And so those are the two things that I really want to talk about. And then I want to hear from all of you. So how does that sound? Good. Okay, good. All right, so let's do it. So Jana, would you just give me like a sense of your work in this space? Because it's so much. And it is one of the things I will share about Jana, just full disclosure, I consider her a dear friend, a brilliant strategist. So Jana thinks a lot about where power is and where to, what the levers of change are, and does it a lot in the private sector. So would you just talk a bit about what that work looks like and what your advocacy looks like? Like, what's your lane?
Yeah, totally. Thank you. I'm really honored to be here with all of you to talk about this work that is deeply important to me. As Umbreen mentioned, I started my first company when I was 23 here in the city called Style House Public Relations. And my naivete was 100% one of the best things when I started my business, as anyone in here who has a business will tell you. But this idea of brand storytelling, telling stories that matter, using communication and connection to engage stakeholders in whatever that might look like, whether that's getting a journalist to tell your story, getting a partner to want to do business with you, getting an investor to invest their time, money, or other resources into your business. So the other piece that was kind of crucial to this too, going back to using the levers of business and power, is that as a very young fashion, home, beauty, wellness publicist, I was working with consumer brands. I realized that so much of our power as women in society, besides how we procreate, besides how we bring men pleasure, is how we buy their things, how we buy the things that they are selling us. Whether that's the clothes that we're wearing or the products that we're using or the ideas that they're selling us on what fulfillment looks like. So 2016 was a real catalyst for me to change the way that I did work. I think we realized that America was much more racist, misogynist, heteronormative than any of us, that a lot of us, I think, were taking for granted. And I started changing the way I did work, and my work evolved to this personal brand alignment work. And that's what Umbreen mentioned. I work with people across so many different kinds of sectors to help them flex their power with intention, all the things that make you or your competitive advantage in the world, if you will, right? And it was through this lens that so I started doing two things at that time too. I started being really selective with the companies that I worked with. Unless there was a reason to tell this story that would change culture beyond selling more SHIT, I was not interested. Honing in and focusing that way got me to work on an incredible strategy project with the WNBA in 2019 during a really critical time for sports and women, and other types of things around that. But it was working with one-on-one with individual leaders that helped me realize that every single person underestimates their power and influence. And I know that from working with really powerful and influential people. And I still have to remind myself on a daily basis that, like, the right nudge from the right person at the right time can make a huge difference. And it was when SB 8 passed in Texas in 2021, when I started, just on every business call I was on, I'd be like, by the way, are you paying attention to what's happening? And I especially started weaving together, threading the needle to IVF and fertility, because IVF and fertility treatments are an enormous business, and it's something that men value. It's much easier for them to wrap their heads around the kids they were able to have that extend their legacy than the kids they didn't have to have in their 20s or with their mistress. And I would kind of say it this way in like kind of plain English to just, humor is, I think, a really important part of this too. So I called what I did being casually alarmist. Which is, it pulls people in a way, everyone loves to say we're all overreacting, right? So I think that the casually alarmist is one of the things that I use there. And so people just were like, yeah, oh my gosh, like, tell me what to do. Tell me what to do, right? Everyone here is like, what is the one thing I should do? I don't know a Supreme Court justice. What am I supposed to do? And so this all fast forwards to Umbreen mentioned VCs for Repro, which is, I just started having lots of conversations with men in power and people who move capital and who make decisions about what gets invested in, what business ideas get to see the light of day, whose lived experiences are centered in those business models that we're investing in. And it was through this that we created this very simple 3-line statement that criminalizing abortion violates human rights and is anti-innovation. This matters to the people investing in the future of our economy. So vote like it matters to you on November 8th. And when we first launched, we had people could only sign on as their firm. We talked about this, the idea of leveraging institutional power. So of course, there are a lot of women in finance and investing that were like, obviously, this is so obvious, right? But we tasked them with advocating for this internally. We need the weight of your institution. And it was because we were measuring this statement in dollars, not because there were dollars put towards this statement, but because we were adding up the assets that were managed across the venture capital firms that signed on to this statement. And I'm really proud to tell you today that we have $112 billion of assets under management that are signed on to this statement right now. Wow. Yeah. It really, I still am kind of pinching myself over it and unpacking all the things that made it work. And we're in strategy and research phase right now because we're going to reactivate for 2024. Should I kind of tell more about it, or do you like what's?
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
To this, which, given your work in business, right?
Louder.
Sure.
Have the mic.
Sorry. Okay, so like business, KPI, metrics, measure success. What does success look like? Is this working?
I think you have to repeat it.
Okay.
No.
Am I?
It's blinking.
Oh.
Okay, hi. All right, so like business, KPIs, metrics, success. How will you know if you're successful is one thing I want to know. And how are you bringing like your business brain to the kind of strategizing that you're doing beyond what you just shared?
Yeah. So first part of it was deciding what we're going to measure and how we're going to explain the impact of it. And so that was part of it, was like money talks, and like that's how you just get people to pay attention. The other thing that I've been able to articulate more recently, going back to how we pull these things from business, is that this is in the US, we identify first and foremost as consumers before we identify as citizens. And it's a huge part of why our democracy is in decay. And so I say that what I've been attempting to do is use consumer messaging for civic engagement. How do we call people in as consumers? As in, you have a stake in this. I've been in brand marketing forever. It's like, what are your deepest, darkest primal needs and fears? And how do we sell you things based on that, right? Not to reduce it, but, and so what was so unique about VCs for Repro was that we called them in as stakeholders, not just as allies, right? And that when we talk about engaging men, that's what it is. And so in order to get men to put their own balls on the line, if you will, with this stuff, they have to feel that it's aligned with their personal brand. They have to feel that this is how they want to be showing up in the world right now, that this is future-proofing their legacy, that the work that they're doing now is going to matter in 5 to 7 years. And granted, I'm being very reductive. I'm talking to a group at a women's college, so I feel very comfortable making these generalizations because we know that there's an asterisk on that. And probably many of us who are married to men are married to men that are more than most, better than most. But it was really about how do we, like, if we want them to spend their dollars, spend their social capital with us, how do we make this, for lack of a better word, sexy, cool, and interesting? And that was how I approached it also in terms of like knowing the short attention spans of people, right? I can tell you as a marketer that people are paying trillions of dollars every second to covet your attention. It's scary.
So can you give us some examples, something specific?
Tell me more. You like of how people are coveting your attention?
No, how you take a customer, a man, and what do you present?
Right. Okay. So yeah.
It's sort of really theoretical.
Yes. Okay. So, so for example, I'd be at like a barbecue and I just bring up abortion. I talk about abortion all the time. Abortion touches everything. Everything is connected. We are all connected. Abortion touches everything. So there's something that's important to everybody that touches abortion. So a lot.
Is it barbecue or profession?
Either, any of the above. I think we should not bifurcate who we are, really, right? I mean, that's what personal brand alignment is to me is about, like integrating all the parts that make us us. So people would just be like, hey, Jana, how you doing? Be like, I'm okay. I'm, you know, really kind of overwhelmed thinking about that, you know, my son and his peers are going to have fewer rights than I did when I was growing up. But, you know, well, because I do it with a smile on my face. And I've actually had people say to me, like, this is effective because you talk about fascism with a smile on your face. Like, you're really good at this. But, and then, you know, let's say if maybe he runs a business, maybe he manages a team, maybe he has wives or daughters, right? There's always the entree point. Wives. Right, exactly. I said it. Wives and daughters. You know, there's women in his life that are meaningful to him. But I'll give an example, for instance, you know, oh, you have women on your team. Great. Like, oh, who does your marketing? The women do the marketing. Okay. Yeah. Do they do a good job? Yeah. Okay. You know, in any of your messaging, how have you, like, how is reproductive rights coming up at your office? Like, is it coming up in terms of employee benefits? Is it coming up in terms of like, you know, wanting to use your marketing channels to make a statement about what's happening? And they're just like, oh God, like, we're not doing anything. What should I be doing? And that was where I was like, oh God, I'm going to have to figure this out. I'm going to have to ask them to do something. I'm going to have to like create something for them to do, because the strategy is, when I talk about focusing and filtering, and this is what I would say, I said, we need to focus on gaining of political voice, and we need to focus on increasing abortion access. So that allows me then to talk to some of these men that work at companies that maybe don't realize that their companies are donating to politicians that are taking away women's rights. They just haven't connected the dots. And I know I'm being reductive, but I think it's important that we talk about it in plain English like this, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I wish we had like an hour to do all the case studies and all the talking about this, but I do think that approaching through business and thinking about the fact that it touches all of us in some way. So what is the entry point for that conversation? Like, I talk to a lot of people who have the same views on this stuff, right? So so it's just interesting to hear that. So Dr. Catalazzi, I am really interested in I would love for you to explain like what our students can access and what kind of the state of play is at Barnard, but also just like what you see as, you know, where you're our first ever chief health officer. So what is the role of Barnard in this moment on this topic?
Thanks. It's so fascinating to be on this with you and hear your approach. Where's the class of 71? Huge shout out for this, this really huge shout out. I watched it last night with my 17-year-old daughter and 13-year-old son. Because, you know, these stories, right? I'm a qualitative researcher. Stories are so important. And data is important. And I often talk about like what gets me up in the morning. I'm going to read you a few statistics, though I'm more of a qualitative person. 6 in 10 people who identify as women live in states that ban abortion or sharply limit reproductive freedom. 7 in 10 Black women live in states that ban or restrict abortion care. 1 in 4 teens live in states that banned abortion after Dobbs. We know that mothers living in a state that banned abortion after Dobbs were up to 3 times as likely to die during pregnancy, childbirth, or soon after giving birth. And we know that this disproportionately affects women of color. So those are numbers that to me like drive me every day, because we know our student body is coming from everywhere, all over the country, all over the world, and they really deserve the best care possible. And we have taken at Barnard, and one of the reasons I took this role is you know, to be able to sit in a group of alum like this, to be able to understand really what it means on a day-to-day basis to be thinking about, you know, say abortion touches everyone, but people are thinking about their reproductive health on a daily basis, whether it's regarding their gender identity, contraception, a pregnancy that's wanted or unwanted. Those are things that you know, our student body is thinking about all the time. So to not be leading in this area is to ignore the needs of our student body. We have an opportunity. We are able to be at the cutting edge. We don't even know what it means to be post-Dobbs yet, but our office and the DEI office actually put together a call for grants, and we were able to fund 5 this past month to really look at and understand on campus what this means, and also sort of more broadly in New York and in the US in general. So currently, we have primary care health services here at Barnard, and we just hired this incredibly well-trained Dr. Sarah Ann Anderson Burnett, and some of you may have met her last evening, and she really comes with the capacity to train and lead the group of nurse practitioners and nurses and other physicians and providers that we have at PCHS. And what we try to really get across to students is that this is a framework that uses gender affirming care and reproductive justice, that it's your human right to be able to decide when and if you want to be pregnant, and if that is something you're capable of doing and want to do, and also how that happens. So assuring that when students come, there's health education, there is respect. We have the Well Woman, which you may have known before, is now called the Wellness Spot, you know, making sure that we're really including everyone in the conversation. So you can get IUDs and Nexplanon, the pill, Plan B, everything in our office now. We also recognize that we are in New York City, and we are, you know, really grateful to be in New York City. You probably know that Governor Hochul just passed some legislation that was really related to a lot of the advocacy work that our students in the Reproductive Health Coalition, Reproductive Justice Coalition, sorry, RJC, had advocated for, which is that all of the state and city universities and colleges have to provide either access to medication abortion or medication abortion on campus. This is something that we put forth in September, and many of you probably heard about it and read about it. And we are really lucky because of mine and Dr. Anderson Burnett's connection to Columbia. There's a family planning group there. Carolyn Westhoff is one of the leaders of that group. She used to lead Planned Parenthood. And they are really at the cutting edge of doing telehealth for medication abortion, you know, really having full service provision. We have warm referrals with them. We always have. We've reinforced that relationship. What we were hearing from our students on campus is, this is my home, and I don't want to take a space from somebody else, from the community who might need that, and you're my provider, and I want to be able to get access here. Dr. Anderson Burnett actually just became a part of the working group with the Reproductive Health Access Project, RAP, where it's all about training. And so we're engaging the grant that we just got, and we're engaging with other institutions. We're the first college that they've funded as part of the working group. And we really feel like we're going to be able to set the stage for other places to know, how do you do this in New York, right? Because we know that there are universities in California, for example, that do this. But really, this is not just in response to students. Of course, student voice is so critically important. But if you look, there was a Lumina and Gallup Foundation poll in April of this year, 72% of students say that they are staying enrolled in their college somewhat based on what their reproductive health access is. 60% of students across age, gender, party lines are saying it really matters what the reproductive services are in the state that I'm going to be attending college. And I have a senior that just graduated. She and her friends were discussing this, and all of them, they were talking about, hey, if I go here, would I have to fly home? What should I get before I go? This is an active conversation. And the stories that we saw from, pre-Roe that's critically important for them to see and understand, because it's happening all across the country now. It's not happening in New York in the same way, but there are, even in New York, depending on where you're getting your care, who's offering it to you, are they giving you appropriate options counseling? Do they think it's okay to talk to a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old? Is the education in school good? Again, that's what, the vast array of students that we're getting that come to Barnard. And then we're here to say, we're going to make sure that you not only know about everything so you can support others in the community, but you'll also have access to everything. So I hope that's helpful. We have a responsibility. I feel really strongly. We have a responsibility as Barnard, and because of our history in this area. I would like to say also, President-elect Rosenberry is someone who's really passionate about this, and having spoken to her about it, she's the one who's actually incredibly knowledgeable in terms of the legal piece. So I'm very excited about that. I'm not touching so much of it either. So between President Bylock's vision of really elevating health and wellness on campus and making sure that when we think about wellness, we have to think about reproductive health for our student body and gender affirming care and all the things that we know are important. And then to have a president-elect who actually is expert in this area, like, I feel so honored and grateful.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be clear that I didn't touch the law stuff because she's my new boss. And I am very excited about all the work she's done in this space and just how we can really lead in this space in general. So I wish we had like so much more time for this, but I want to take the one question right here before we wrap, because we're just scratching the surface of a great conversation.
So I'm Abby Parisler from the class of 67, and I was a Jane in Chicago. My question to you is, are you giving out mifepristol and misoprostol here for people and not just referring them out? And what about our staff?
Oh, great question.
Okay. Yeah, so the question was, are we giving out Miffy and misoprostol here on campus, and what about our staff? So the RAP training that we're doing, the rollout is happening this fall so that we can do it on campus, and people will have choices. I think the important thing is some students want to do it here, some people don't, right? It's all about all of the range of options. In terms of staff, one of the things in my role is ensuring that people know they have what options they have. So we don't provide care for any of our staff or faculty, but I do a lot of referrals and warm referrals for them. But everything is covered under the insurance that Barnard provides. That's really important, that the reproductive health services are covered.
What a great person to end on. Thank you, Abby. And If you haven't seen the Janes, by the way, we screened it at the Athena Film Festival last year and Abby was there in person and it was amazing. So thank you everyone for taking time and, you know, getting to, like I said, scratch the surface on this topic with us. I really appreciate your time.